মা কি অপরাধ করেছেন আপনারা?
কিছু করেননি আমরা, পাঁচটা ছটা গরু বাছুর দুনিয়ার আগুন
লুটপাট করছে, তাও আমাদের হিন্দু জাত কিছু বলি না। ওরা পেট্রোল আছে, বম লিয়ে আছে, চাকু লিয়ে আছে, আর আমাদের হিন্দুর ঘরে একটা অস্ত্র লিয়ে নাই। তাও আমরা এইভাবে চুপ করে কাঠে আছি, তাও অশান্তি করছে। চুল ধরে টানছে, হাত ধরে টানছে, বম চালাইছে, দুয়ারে পেট্রোল ঢালছে।
আপনাদের বাড়ি কোথায়?
বেদবনা 16 নম্বর ওয়ার্ড।
তোমাদের ইজ্জত আমাদেরকে দিয়ে দাও, তোমাদের স্বামী সন্তানকে রক্ষা করবো আমরা। আমরা নিজের ইজ্জত আমাদের স্বামী সন্তানকে দিব না, ওনাদেরকে দিব, ওনাদের হাতে সঁপে দিব। এইগুলো আমাদের পরিস্থিতি। আতঙ্ক হয়ে চলে এসেছি, আমরা কথা বলতে পারছি না। পা ধরেছি প্রধানের, আমরা কান্না করছি, তাও আমাদের
নিয়ে নাও, কিন্তু লুটপাট করিও না। লুটপাট করে নাও, যা আছে বাড়িতে বলিয়ে নাও, ছেড়ে দিছি। কিন্তু আমাদের পুরায় না, আমাদেরকে কিছু বলিয়ে না, তবু ওরা ছাড়েনি। বম চালাচ্ছে, বম চালাচ্ছে, ইট চালাচ্ছে, ছেলে চালাচ্ছে, পেট্রোল ঢেলে পুড়িয়ে দিচ্ছে।
মাতাজি দাঁড়িয়ে হয়েছে,
পেট্রোল ঢেলে পুড়িয়ে দিয়ে
হ্যাঁ, পেট্রোল ঢেলেছে বাড়ি ঘরে। চাল ডাল যা আছে
মানুষের শরীরের মধ্যে পেট্রোল ঢেলে দিচ্ছে, দূর থেকে পেট্রোল ঢেলে ধরিয়ে দিচ্ছে। যারা দৌড়ে পালাচ্ছে তারা বেঁচেছে।
জীবন্ত মানুষ,
হ্যাঁ, জীবন্ত মানুষের দৌড়ে পালাচ্ছে, যে পেট্রোল ঢেলে দিয়েছে তো দৌড়ে পালাচ্ছে। মেরে ফেলার জন্য বিষ মেখিয়ে দিয়েছে, টাঙ্কিতে জল খেতে দিবে না, বিষ দিয়ে আছে।
কোথায় বিষ দিয়েছে?
জলের টাঙ্কিতে বিষ দিয়েছে, জল খেতে দিবে না। জল খেতে গেলে তো আমরা মরে যাবো, টাঙ্কিতে বিষ দিয়ে দিয়েছে। আবার কি খেয়ে বাঁচবো বলুন? আমাদের জলে বিষ, আমাদের গায়ে পেট্রোল, আমাদের ইজ্জতের সঙ্গে খেলা করছে। তা আমরা কি করে বাঁচবো, আর কি করে বা সেফটি করে থাকবো, আর কি করে বা থাকবো? বাড়ি ঘর তো নাই, ওইগুলো তো আমরা কিছু তো নাই, আমাদের কিছু তো নাই। আমাদের ইজ্জত নিয়ে টানাটানি করছে, আমাদের জান নিয়ে টানাটানি করছে। তা আমরা কোথায় গিয়ে দাঁড়াবো?
सुरक्षा चाहिए और कुछ नहीं चाहिए।
रुकिए आप लोग क्या क्या तोड़ा गया है? आप लोग क्या?
हम लोग को दुकान तोड़ दिया है, आदमी को मार काट दिया है, ये सब तोड़ दिया है, ये सब चोरा के ले गया, लूटपाट करके ले गया सब कुछ। हम लोग का एक तो घर में जनाना आदमी सब छोटा छोटा लड़का बच्चा है हम लोग का, कैसे घर में रह के चाकू छुरी लेके घर में घुस जाके मर रहा है। हम लोग क्या करेंगे, कहाँ जाएंगे हम लोग, बताइए। हम लोग, मेरा घर में एक ठो बेटा है, मेरा बेलडांगा में रहता है। उतना कष्ट कर पुलिस लोग सब ये सब लोग मेरा बेटा को लेके आया, कितना कष्ट करके आया, चिल्लाया। घर में घुस जाके घर झाड़ू के तोड़ दिया, सब कुछ तोड़ के इतना किया जो मैं छोटा बच्चा था दम निकाल गया था। मेरा नाम है अंजलि राय।
পশ্চিম বাংলার যে ওয়াকফ সম্পত্তি তালিকা তা খুলে দেখুন। কলকাতার রাজভবন ওয়াকফ সম্পত্তি, ইডেন গার্ডেন ওয়াকফ সম্পত্তি, হাইকোর্টের জায়গা ওয়াকফ সম্পত্তি, এমনকি ব্রিগেড ময়দান সেটা ওয়াকফ সম্পত্তি।
Namaste everyone, welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is Kushalmehra. I purposely started today's podcast by playing these 3 clips so that you get a context of what is happening before I introduce the guest today. Today's podcast is about what is going on in West Bengal right now in the region of Murshidabad. These 3 clips clearly show. I mean, I'm giving obviously Kanchan Dada when he joins us and when he starts speaking, I'll request him to give a proper translation of the Bengali bits. But the long story short, mobs of Muslim people post the passing of the Waqf amendment have run roughshod all over, and the Hindus in those areas are being brutally attacked. And the state government is hand in glove or not. That is for people to understand. But now I will call Kanchan Dada in. Kanchan Dada, thank you as always for agreeing to come and talk about this. Dada, my first request to you is, could you please translate for everyone what was being said, by that Muslim gentleman? I think he's claiming everything is Waqf property from what I understand. And what were the women who were talking to the Republic Bangla journalists there?
Well, a very quick summary. The Muslim protester or Muslim leader who was reading out the list of properties controlled or which are actually owned by the Waqf, because these are Waqf properties, or so he claims. And he lists the Calcutta High Court, the governor's residence, the historic Eden Gardens, and virtually all of Calcutta, according to him, is Waqf property, and therefore they should all be surrendered to them. Now, this is in line with the national claim. I mean, which we sort of tried to tabulate. It's very interesting. Between the introduction of the Waqf Amendment Bill and and the setting up of a joint parliamentary committee to sort of analyze the bill, and the actual adoption of the Waqf Amendment Bill and its passage into Act, the number of claims made by various Waqf boards, they shot up by some mind-boggling 1,000%, 2,000%. All of India from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, it would seem, is actually Waqf property. And therefore the government should surrender it, and the people of India should surrender it. The land on which railways run their trains, that is Waqf property. The airports are Waqf property. The president's house is Waqf property. Everything, Parliament is Waqf property. Supreme Court is Waqf property. Everything is Waqf property. And what these women were saying, they are the victims of the rioting which happened in Mushidabad district. So primarily they are saying that the rioters attacked their homes. They threw petrol on women and children who were fleeing their homes to save their lives. The whole idea was to throw a lit matchstick on them and turn them into human torches. And they are also claiming that the water tank in their area was poisoned. Now, I don't know the veracity of the latter claim that the water was poisoned, but what I would like to say is that the targeted violent hate has to be really, really intense. And it has to be so on such a scale that people start believing that the water has been poisoned, that they are waiting to get hold of you, that they are going to kill your children. So this fear psychosis, I mean, the real purpose of these riots is to create a fear psychosis among Hindus both in Muslim dominated areas as well as the non-dominated areas. So this is the whole idea behind these orchestrated riots.
So what I find fascinating in this entire thing is that the Muslim population in percentage, forget the percentage bit, in absolute numbers, for example, it's not that UP does not have a high percentage of Muslims even in percentage ways, but in absolute numbers, UP has far more. So I want to first focus on the bit of the law and order situation in Bengal historically, where not just political violence, even Hindu-Muslim violence just goes on happening. And what I tend to see is that, in my experience, if the state government, because law and order is a state subject before people start yelling and screaming, no matter how much they want to yell and scream, law and order literally is a state subject in India. Why does it keep happening in West Bengal? Can it happen without the willingness of the state government?
No, it can't. Again, just a very quick comparison. Although we don't know the exact Muslim population of any state and the whole country as of today, because the 2021 census is yet to be held, and because of the lockdown years, everything has been derailed, but I understand the process will begin soon. But in the absence of the census and absolute numbers, we can safely assume that there has been quite a substantial decadal increase in West Bengal's and the country's Muslim population. But this increase has been most acute, for instance, say in Assam. And yet in Assam, where a large number of districts have gone under a Muslim majority population, we have not seen any violent protests against the Waqf Amendment Act, We have not seen any rioting happening. We have not seen any displacement of Hindu Assamese or tribal Assamese happening. Why is it that Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma could keep his state in control? He could sort of ensure law and order is not disturbed. But in neighboring West Bengal, you have a diametrically different picture where the law and order has gone for a toss. And the Chief Minister, Mamata Banerjee, who is also the Home Minister of the state, has abjectly failed yet again to ensure that law and order is maintained, that the law of the land is imposed. And again, a third state, say in UP, Western UP, as you know and others would know, has a substantial Muslim population, much more than Eastern UP, and Eastern UP by itself has a huge Muslim population. And despite that, the much maligned state, much maligned by Mamata Banerjee and her cronies, MPs and MLAs and Trinamool politicians who keep on spitting at Uttar Pradesh as a badly governed state. But in Uttar Pradesh, where I live, we have not seen even a murmur of protest. So these are questions which should be asked, and the answers, to my mind, lead to only one fact, and that is the violence we are seeing in West Bengal is orchestrated, it is politically fueled, and Mamata Banerjee had an inkling, it would seem, that such violence would happen. On 18th February this year, speaking in the West Bengal Assembly, she had said that if there are protests, then will you be able to control? I mean, it was a rhetorical question to the central government. So, as I said, I mean, this is something which would not have happened, which could not have happened if the chief minister, who also happens to be the home minister, and the West Bengal police reports to her, if she had made it abundantly clear that under no circumstances will any disturbance be tolerated. On the contrary, what do we see? We see the chief of West Bengal police saying that, we can only use moderate force. I mean, he is an IPS officer. He wears the uniform of a Indian police service officer. And he says that in a situation where people are running riot, never mind who the people are, from which community, but people are running riot, that they are torching vehicles, police vehicles, ambulances, that they are looting shops, that they are targeting Hindu businesses, and entire mall is looted and set on fire. And he says that we can only use mild force. I mean, which other state, no matter how badly governed it may be, would you see something like this? Barring Punjab, which is ruled by AAP, a fellow traveler of TMC, I don't think in any other state you would find a situation like this.
But Dada, what do we do when people say, as far as law and order is concerned, why doesn't the central government try to send, let's say, CRPF and other troops and try to control the situation? Or what are the legal processes involved as far as that is concerned? Why doesn't the center intervene? If that is the case, after all, Bengal is a part of India. Bengalis are citizens of India. Their lives should matter. So if the state government is failing in its responsibility to protect the people, why is the central government not willing to do it?
Well, for whatever it's worth, in their wisdom, the framers of the Constitution of India, they had prepared three lists. One was the state list, one was the union list, and the third was the joint list of subjects where both the center and the state are responsible. On the state list, they had placed law and order. So law and order constitutionally, in the constitutional framework, is not only a state subject, but it is also entirely the responsibility of the state government. And the center can only aid and support the state government in its primary responsibility of ensuring no lives are lost, no property is destroyed, no damage is done, no social or cultural damage is done. Now, you have the TMC, which keeps on shouting in Parliament about their concept of separation of powers, of federalism, how in a federal structure the state government should be allowed to handle its own affairs. Well, what happens? I mean, when push comes to shove, the state government, in this case, we have seen and the whole world can see, has abjectly failed. The chief minister, by virtue of holding the home portfolio of West Bengal and the police reporting to her, she is entirely 100% responsible for maintaining law and order in West Bengal. And she's equally responsible, 100% responsible, if the law and order collapses or if the law and order is not enforced or maintained as it should be. So both ways, the responsibility is hers. Now, you have asked a very valid question that, people living in West Bengal are citizens of India, and the Union of India cannot disown its responsibility. No, it can't. But the constitutional constraints which are in place demand that you can send in central forces only if the state government asks for them. You cannot suo motu send in central forces. Well, that is the reality. And that is why the Calcutta High Court had to step in when it saw that the chief minister and her government were purposely not acting against the violent mobs, that they were, for whatever reason, reluctant to act against the mobs, that the police was not playing its rightful role. The Calcutta High Court stepped in and asked for the immediate deployment of central forces. Now, this is something which the chief minister should have done on her own, but she did not, and we know why she did not. And the center, on the other hand, immediately diverted BSF from their border duty. They dispatched CRPF units to West Bengal. They have also increased the number of personnel. But in our structure, in our system, the central forces can act only within the constricts or the limits of the civil administration system. So they cannot sort of march in just like that. They have to have permissions to do it. Now, you have a government which refuses to collaborate, to cooperate, and it thinks that it can do everything. Well, I'm sorry, they can't do anything. And that's how it happens. It's really very sad. Now, why can't the center impose precedence rule? Well, that is a very, very drastic decision, and a decision that has to meet not only the constitutional provisions of imposing precedence rule, but it has to also meet judicial approval. So what is the guarantee that the judiciary is going to approve the imposition of precedence rule or the imposition of central rule? It is going to be challenged, and we don't know which way the judiciary is going to swing. So that's where we are. But let me also assure you that the central government, keeping with its own sense of responsibility in a situation like this and its own obligations towards discharging its duties, has been in touch with the state government. It has asked for details from the state government. It has asked for updates. And I understand there's constant communication between the Home Ministry and the central government with the state government.
But Dada, why? I don't understand this. Okay, I understand the Bommai judgment exists, and under the Bommai judgment, basically, the courts are going to refuse to honor the president's rule if the center chooses to impose it. Is that the case? Is that what we are trying to say over here?
I would not want to get into a detailed discussion on president's rule or its or whether it should be imposed or not be imposed. That's a different subject from what we are discussing today. What is important is that the administration should get going and not foolishly allow further rallies or further so-called protest rallies to happen, like they have allowed one to be held in Siliguri tomorrow, in a zone where this is called the Chicken's Neck, which is the narrowest part of Indian territory and which links the mainland to India's northeast. And it is something which is very important for national security. It is very important for our frontier security. It is very important for our internal security. And the government of West Bengal, I am told, I understand from a letter written by the member of parliament from Darjeeling, that has allowed a meeting, a protest rally to be held by a particular organization which has a long history of unleashing violence, of using rallies to unleash violence, to riot, to attack Hindus, etc., etc. There's a long charge sheet against this organization, and yet it has been allowed to hold a rally in Siliguri tomorrow. And this is the point which I was making, that in 2011 all of Darjeeling district had 5% Muslims. In 2025 we see a horde, a huge massive crowd of Muslims deciding to hold a protest rally over there. Now, who is responsible for this? Shouldn't the government have disallowed permission, given what's happening in the rest of the state, given the fact that violence, rioting has spread from Murshidabad to 3 districts, and all these are very sensitive districts in terms of their demography, and that you have ministers in Mamata Banerjee's government like Siddiqullah Chaudhary and others who have been issuing public threats of bringing Calcutta to a standstill. So, the mind boggles that this is an administration which is so untrustworthy to carry out its responsibilities with any degree of honesty, is in power in West Bengal and is straddling over a state which just continues to descend into further chaos, anarchy, and popular distrust.
Now, you spoke about the demography. I want to share this image for people. This is basically West Bengal's regional dynamics, and there are just areas in West Bengal where what can the government take? How does one do this? There are certain areas that, what is the center going to do? How is the center going to control this? Is something that I'm wondering. Look at the population, and this is the 2011 census. In Murshidabad, in terms of percentage, is 66.27 as per the 2011 census, and all the violence is happening in Murshidabad. It's not rocket science that wherever the Muslim population has reached a very dangerous critical mass, we are having this issue. I mean, Dada, this has to be said without any apology. Yeah, that demography is destiny. That if demography of an area changes, the destiny of the Hindus of that area is quite obvious. So it's somewhere down the line, we as a society, as a polity, need to have this discussion without being thinking that, there's somebody's going to call us a bigot. No, there are objectively bad ideas. And right now, the honorable member of parliament of TMC from the Rajya Sabha, who also happens to be an ex-journalist, is talking about fake news and fake photos without condemning the violence that has been unleashed on the innocent Hindus of that area. Or the other one, Mr. Derek O'Brien, he's sharing food photos on his social media. I mean, what is going on?
Kushal, can you just display the map once again? I would like to explain
Sure.
it.
Yeah, sure.
See,
sure.
if you look at Kuch Bihar, which is a border district, it says 25.54. I am pretty sure by now it has gone up to 30 or crossed 30. Jalpaiguri has 11.51. It would have reached at least 18 to 20%. Darjeeling, as you see, it says 5%. But now if you go to Darjeeling, you will see the visible presence is way more than that. North Dinajpur, which was after partition 100% Hindu area, almost nearly 100% Hindu area. North Dinajpur now has 50% Muslim population per 2011. This is also a border district. In South Dinajpur, it is 25%. Again, a border district. Malda, 51%, a border district. Murshidabad, 66.27, which is a border district. Nadia, it is 26.76. Nadia, again, was a nearly 100% Muslim zone. In North 24 Parganas, it is 25, almost 26%. It would be close to 30, if not more than 30 today. And Kolkata says 20.6. I think that is an underestimation. It will be at least 25, if not more than that. And South 24 Parganas is 35.57, say 36%. So this is your demography along the border zone. If you look at the central districts, Birbhum, again, a Hindu majority district, now has 37% Muslim population. Burdwan has 21% Muslim population. Now, this kind of escalation of any single population is totally inexplicable unless we are looking at widespread immigration from across the border. And what I try to explain to people is that don't look at the land border or the riverine border alone. You have the BSF patrolling there. Most of the people get blocked at the border while trying to cross it illegally. But if you look at the bottom part of West Bengal, which is the estuarine zone, that is the Ganga estuary, and that is the Sundarbans zone. And if you look at the map of Bangladesh, it is an adjoining estuary zone, and that is the Sundarbans part in Bangladesh. And you have boatloads of people coming in, landing in the Sundarbans area, and then traveling up to North 24 Parganas, South 24 Parganas. And today, if you go to Bengal, it is the people of Bengal. I'm not saying this. It's the people of Calcutta who will show you bastis and say, these are all Rohingyas. They will show you a shanty town and say, these are all Rohingyas. They will show you kacha houses and they will say, these are Rohingyas who have been settled by the TMC. Her own people are saying this. This is not the center saying it. This is not me saying it or others saying it. Her own people are saying this. So when you say that it's all this is fake news, I mean, is she accusing her own people of telling lies? Why? Why would they tell lies? And data doesn't lie. The data is right here in front of you. And yes, I entirely agree that demography is destiny. When demography is allowed to spin out of control, when demography becomes unscientifically, lopsided and poses a social disruption, a cultural disruption, then there is a problem. And it's not only about West Bengal or India that I talk about, or Assam that I talk about. If you look at Europe, the crisis which Europe is going through, the crisis which all of Europe, the central part of Europe, Christendom, the entire Christendom, what was known as Christendom, the crisis which they face today is a crisis posed by their demography, and the demography of Christendom has posed or is posing today an existential crisis. So this is a reality, and somehow we have willed ourselves into believing that it is wrong to talk about this, and anybody who talks about it openly is not secular. He's some right-wing bigot. He's some bhakt, or he's some uneducated lumpen element. I'm sorry. Just because you don't want to recognize a problem that stares you in the face doesn't mean that the problem doesn't exist, or the problem is fictional, or that everything is fine. It is not. India today faces a huge problem, and the sooner the government of India, and by the government of India I just don't mean only the party in power, but the system of government of India recognizes this problem and moves forward.
Dada, my disappointment with, when I say not the BJP, I mean the state, the overall state apparatus in India, has been that I just don't think we seem to take these things seriously enough until things go really out of hand. And this is just my point of view. I'm speaking on my behalf, not on Kanchan Gupta's behalf. And demography matters because demography carries ideas. I a lot of my liberal friends keep talking about this secular communal rubbish all the time. And I just ask them one thing. I said, can a gay person live in Muhammad Ali Road in India? Can they? I asked them straight up. They cannot. If you are someone who has modern ideas, you can only live in a Hindu area in India, or a Christian area in India, or a Buddhist area in India, or an atheist colony in India. You can't live in a majority Muslim area. That's just a fact of life. Doesn't make me anti-Muslim. I am not saying all Muslims are like that. I am saying I, as an open atheist, cannot live in a Muslim area. I just can't. Because my life will be made miserable on a daily basis. When will we start having comfortable discussions around this?
No, I agree with you. Popular memory is very short-lived. People forget, and that is actually the real problem with India. We have a very poor sense of history, both long-term history as well as contemporary history. There was a gay professor in Aligarh Muslim University, and he was outed, and we know what followed after that. So Aligarh Muslim University, which is very determined that the middle name of the university must not change. It should not become Aligarh University, but it should remain Aligarh Muslim University. The way in which they treated that poor professor is unimaginable. And that is exactly what I mean. You see, demography is destiny. Demography faces a threat to an entire society, irrespective of whether you are a liberal, whether you are a non-liberal, whether you are a lefty, or whether you are a righty. It is a problem that stares everybody in the face. And within that matrix, I have a feeling, or this is my view, that the liberal segment of society, the bleeding heart liberals of India, of the rest of the world, they face the biggest challenge from the rising tide of demographic disbalance. So it is, we look down upon right-wingers. We will survive. Don't worry about us. But it is your existence that is in doubt. I mean, you will not be allowed to survive. You will not be allowed to sort of, survive this onslaught.
What bothers me is the hypocrisy around the discourse. Like, I have come to a point where I've actually had enough of this rubbish. I like secularism. I like liberal values. I like all these things. It got applied on the Hindu society. By and large, Hindu society accepted it. But you have a large swath in this country that refuses to accept this idea, and we are somehow supposed to say, nahi, dhire dhire karte hain, dhire dhire. Arey, aur kitna dhire karenge, dada? It's been 75 years since independence. How much more dheere dheere do we want? Every time we talk about any reform, it is like, oh, did we take the community along or not? But why? Why should the community be taken along? If it's a good idea, it's a good idea, right?
Well, the community, it's very strange when suddenly people remember the community. When Nehru brought in his 5 Hindu reform laws, were the Hindus as a community taken into consideration? Were the Hindus stakeholders in those reformist laws? They were not. In fact, there were elements in those laws in those days. I mean, societies evolve, communities evolve, our thinking changes, our perspective changes. And this I'm talking of close to it is 70 years ago and 75 years ago. And a lot has changed in the way we look at ourselves and at the world between then and now. But in those days, all Hindu objections, including objections raised by President Rajendra Prasad, they were steamrolled by Nehru in bringing in these laws. Good for him and good for Hindus that these laws were brought in. And in the long term, we have benefited from these laws. But
Yes.
subsequently, every time we have tried to bring in a reformist law, which is not only about Muslims. The biggest protest has come from the Muslim community. Again, let me take you slightly back in time. In 1970s, adoption was a big issue in our country. I mean, adoption laws were very complicated. There were people who wanted to adopt, they couldn't adopt. Parsis couldn't adopt, and Parsis needed to adopt because there were wealthy Parsis who were childless, and they needed to adopt to pass on their wealth. And after they died, and there was, or it would just pass into some community wealth of which they were not very sure, whatever. And it is to address these questions, it is to address these flaws in adoption in our country. Indira Gandhi brought in the adoption bill. Now, the adoption bill applied equally to all communities. A Hindu could adopt under the adoption bill. The process was laid down. The legal sanction was given. A Parsi could do it. Process was laid down. Legal sanction was given. And Muslims who also are disallowed to adopt children by Sharia, they too could adopt children under this law, and they would get legal protection. And it was not a mandatory law, it was a voluntary law. If you chose to adopt a child under this law, the law would apply. If you chose not to apply, then it's not that the government would come knocking on your door and thrust the law down your throat and make you adopt a child. But what happened? Immediately, like we are seeing with the Waqf Amendment Act, immediately the mullahs took to the streets. There was widespread violence. The few public buses we had in Delhi those days, or in the other metros, then there were only a few metros, those were set on fire, etc., etc., etc. And such was the furor that the party turned on Indira Gandhi and said, no, you must take the community into consideration before you pass this bill or bring this bill. And that was the end of the adoption bill. And that was also the birth of the so-called All India Muslim Personal Law Board, because the mullahs decided the only way we can tackle the government of India and its secular pretenses is by having an organization of our own, which will threaten to disrupt life in India every time you thought of a law that benefits people across communities. We will not allow it. So that is how they turned their vote, VOTE, into a veto, VETO. And people do not realize this. They just simply don't realize this. A book is published in London, and it is immediately banned in India. Nobody has read it, nobody has seen it, leave alone Muslims in this country or their leaders. They don't even know what the writer looks like or what the cover of the book looks like or what is it about. But there are riots in Kashmir and people die in those riots. I will bring you to the Shah Bano judgment and what Sayyid Shahabuddin did. He threatened that mind my words, every Muslim Indian, he qualified it as Muslim Indian. He didn't say Indian Muslim. He said every Muslim Indian will fight this government in the streets, in parliament, and we shall not allow this judgment to come into force. And he called for a boycott of Republic Day or Independence Day celebrations, whatever was nearby. And he said that lights will not be switched on, and we will determine what is right and what is wrong for a Muslim woman who's been thrown out from her marital home. And that is how it happened. The Rajiv Gandhi government crumbled and they gave in. So Nehru had his way with the Hindu laws. Indira Gandhi had to cave in rather than bring in a modernizing law. Rajiv Gandhi had to cave in rather than accepting the judicial verdict in the Supreme Court and making that into a case law. And during the rest of the time, we had either khichdi governments till Mr. Modi came to power, which were very happy to sort of play second fiddle to the mullah leadership of India. So whether it was the Congress, whether it was the various other state units, state parties, that was the normal story.
Beyond a point, Dada, somebody has to learn that the state has to impose its will. The state does. The state does impose its will in UP. You know, I might have my minor disagreements here and there with Yogi Adityanath and his economic policies. I like his, law and order policy. The state has to have a monopoly on violence in any country. The abject failure of the Bengal government, and I don't understand how people manage to, say that all of this is the fault of the BJP in some ninja logic. The BJP has its own mistakes. Anybody who watches this show knows I criticize them. But the point is, another question that I had, can some areas be declared disturbed areas in Bengal? I think there is legal precedent for that. I was studying that. And just impose Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Like, how do we control these areas, Dada? Like, हिंदू को मार दे रहे हैं ओपनली, तो मतलब यहाँ तो आसपाई लगाना पड़ेगा, करे क्या? मतलब we can't let this happen anymore. Like, okay, president's rule, I actually agree. There is literally no legal precedent. There is literally no legal precedent. It will be smashed and BJP and the central government will have egg on its face. But यहाँ तो Armed Forces Special Powers Act लगाओ यार, खुद तो करना पड़ेगा उधर. Somebody has to impose the will of the state if the chief minister doesn't.
Okay, I will then explain this to you. When the Modi government brought in the triple talaq bill, and this was not a sort of a suo motu action, it followed the Supreme Court's order that a law has to be brought in to put an end to this practice of saying talaq, 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 and kicking your wife out of the house along with her children, and refuse to pay any maintenance to her. Now, the government, the state shows its determination. It brings in the bill. The bill is passed by parliament into law. Who is criticizing it? All your liberal parties, all your lefties, the CPM, the CPI, the Congress, the Socialists, everybody, the RJD, the great benefactor of the downtrodden and the poor, the Samajwadi Party, the great socialists who live in first world luxury, and they went to court. They went to court demanding that the court strikes down this triple talaq law. Why? I mean, you could even begin arguing with them by saying that, look, who's benefiting from this? No Hindu woman is going to benefit from this. No Christian woman is going to benefit from this. No Buddhist or Jain woman is going to benefit from this. It is the Muslim woman. So what is your problem? They said, no, 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 we must not interfere. So therefore, we must not interfere is equal to a permission to kick out a woman with whom you have slept and produced children just by saying talak, 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 not even in person. You could pick up your cell phone and sitting in Dubai or some other country, you could just tell your wife that talak, 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 now please get out of my house. Now this kind of protest, is unthinkable that it shouldn't really be happening in any decent country. But nonetheless, it happened. So now when you say that how to impose the authority of the state, I have no doubt that the Modi government has its own determination that we shall plod on regardless of these obstacles. I have no doubt that most of the chief ministers, and I don't mean only the UP chief minister, but most of the chief ministers are quite determined that enough is enough and you cannot take law and order into your hands at the drop of a hat and pretend to be the perpetually aggrieved. So there is some cross-party acceptance of it, which is happening. But then you have outliers like Mamata Banerjee and her TMC, whose entire political capital is this kind of violence, this kind of disruption, this kind of quote-unquote protest. They have no other political capital. They have no jobs to show. They have been selling jobs in West Bengal. Now, we hear of only 26,000 teachers who were appointed for money. So cash for jobs. But there were similar rackets for non-teaching staff. There were similar rackets for appointment of teachers under local authorities. For instance, the Gorkhaland Territorial Authority. The teachers appointed over there were appointed in a similar manner for cash for jobs. So scam after scam after scam. Money sent to West Bengal under the Prime Minister's housing scheme is sort of cornered by her henchmen in the district towns and district villages. Money sent by the West Bengal government for any scheme is similarly, money sent under the employment guarantee scheme, Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee Scheme. Why is it that the funds ran into trouble? The West Bengal government refused to give accounts for the money spent and how it was spent. It refused to give it for the simple reason that they knew this money was not actually spent on employing people, but in handing out to party leaders at the district level and also siphoning a lot of it to their own funds. So, what do you do? It is a mug's game. So the state, yes, I agree, the state needs to be determined, the state needs to be tough, and state must have monopoly over violence. The state, in fact, that is what the law in this country says, that the right to take away someone's life is entirely based in the state and nobody else. But despite that, all this happens, and how do you control it? How do you get someone like Mamata Banerjee, who thinks it is fashionable to be the odd person out, who goes jogging in Hyde Park while in Murshidabad slogans are raised that in Bengali and in Hindi that we will not let a single Hindu remain over here or live over here. We will see to it that all Hindus are exterminated or whatever. That video is available. It's not that, they can claim that it is not true or it is fake, but it is there. And then she deploys her party spokesman who says that all this is a grand conspiracy between the BJP, the central government, the central agencies, the BSF. The BSF left a portion of the border unguarded so that people could come in from Bangladesh, do all this violence, commit all this violence, and go back. If he has that kind of information of a conspiracy to to engineer violence, then I although I have no say and my word is inconsequential, I think the National Investigating Agency or the CBI or whichever is the right agency should pick up this person and take him into custody for a very intensive grilling to find out the real conspiracy which he is talking about, what are the contours of it, who are the people involved, and if it is not true, then he should be punished for sowing seeds of distrust of the state. And of the state over here, I mean what you explained as the state. But because this is how you create popular distrust of the state.
Yeah, and distrust. Not only that, I don't. My criticism is: listen, I understand the BJP state unit is doing everything that it can. I know state leaders are going everywhere; they are creating noise. But I think the center has to consider. I know you may not agree with the legal possibilities, but the center has to consider the threat of AFSPA in some parts of Bengal. I think that has to be a first step now. It has to be considered that because. In combination with the current hostility that is coming from our neighbor Bangladesh and the current state of affairs in Bengal, I just think we have no option. We have no option. We cannot afford. And Bangladesh needs to be given a complete and clear message that, if we could create you in 1971, we can do a lot more in 2025. I think some things have to be said very clearly because this violence in Bengal and Bangladesh is crystally connected.
No, I think that messaging to Bangladesh is already happening, but let's for the moment keep Bangladesh out of it. But this whole thing of AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, now AFSPA has a particular history behind it. Why was this act passed? Why was this act created? And at whom was it directed? The law was directed at enemies of the state, and mostly to do with enemies who were not residents of the state but who were insurgents and who were coming in and creating violence. Now, to declare areas of West Bengal as disturbed and impose AFSPA over there is problematic. It is problematic both judicially, it is problematic juridically, and it is problematic in terms of ultimately in a democracy, Kushal, you and I and most of us, we believe that the solution lies in democratic politics, in political solutions, and in ensuring that the political leadership remains at the top of the pyramid and not the army or the armed forces or the security forces. That is not a very good way of looking at democracy and the democratic impulse of governance. And that is one of the reasons why I believe the Modi government has systematically reduced the area under Armed Forces Special Powers Act, whether in Jammu and Kashmir, whether in the Northeast, because ultimately, as I said, in a democracy, it has to be the political leadership, it has to be political sagacity, and whatever you can do politically within the constitutional framework should be done, should be explored, and should be done. So that I am clear in my mind. But on Disturbed Areas Act, I would withhold my comment on that.
So fair enough. My claim is very clear. I don't know what more the government needs to understand that this area is really disturbed. You have a history of violence again and again and again and again and again that keeps happening under the Mamata Banerjee government. Every time some reform is attempted inside the Muslim community, one does not need to mince their words. Every time some reform is attempted in the Muslim community, people resort to violence in some part of India where the BJP is not in power at the state level. That's just a fact of life. This attempt is made all the time. And
Kushal,
we can't wait for the BJP to be in power in Bengal.
No, Kushal, I agree with you. And a last comment, because I have to leave in a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Everybody knows about the grisly incident which happened in Archikar Medical College in Calcutta, a young doctor. She was raped and murdered in the hospital premises. In fact, in one of the halls of the college, and her body was found, and then there was undue haste shown by the administration, the principal and others, in covering up the death, in declaring, first they said she had committed suicide, then they said that she died of some strange unknown reason or whatever, and the evidence was methodically destroyed, and they even broke the hall where the incident happened, claiming that it needed renovation, and it needed renovation within 24 hours of this incident. And after that, what we saw was all of West Bengal out in the streets protesting and saying that this is not acceptable. It was a replica of the Nirbhaya protests which happened in Delhi after an unfortunate young woman was gang raped in a moving bus and killed. And and this protest went on for days. All the junior doctors, all senior doctors, all known faces, all quote unquote intellectuals, Bengali intellectuals, all quote unquote Bengali cine stars. They joined the protests and said, "Oh, this time we must stand up. We stand with this poor victim and her family, and we shall not be moved until such time something happens." Now, immediately after these, and even while the protests were on, not only in Calcutta but across West Bengal, you name it, and every town, every district headquarter was witnessing mass protests. So there were 6 by-elections held in West Bengal, 6 assembly constituency by-elections, including a couple where the incumbent was had been a non-TMC person, and TMC swept the by-elections. Each and every one of them, and they were geographically spread. So it's not as if in one parliamentary constituency or 2 parliamentary constituencies. So what does it tell you about the people of West Bengal? Because you said that people must realize. Of course, people must realize. They must realize that what is at stake is their very existence. What is at stake is their rights as a citizen. And if they don't agree with you, if they don't agree with this contention, what can you do?
Yeah, no, I understand, and there is a lot of soul searching to be done, and I think there is a lot of false commentary where people are trying to equate the BJP and TMC through a sleight of hand, which is, I think, grossly unfair. I believe we have data points to show that under BJP, law and order actively becomes better, irrespective of what the population of Muslims in that area is. It is and I don't know how else do I say this, Dada, because this weekend I'm going to do another important. I just think, before I let you go, I know you have to go, I just think, Dada, regional parties are the curse of Indian democracy now. That's just my personal view. They are the curse of Indian democracy.
And you see, Rahul, Kushal, since I work for the government, it is not for me to comment on political
I understand,
parties.
Dada. इसके लिए मैं बोल रहा हूँ, मैं आपके शब्द नहीं है, ये मेरे शब्द हैं.
So I really can't comment on that. But as a Bengali, it really pains me when I see what's happening in West Bengal. And it pains me all the more because people around me where I live, they look at me very strangely that, is this where you come from? And it pains me because Bengal and Bengalis somehow seem to have been mesmerized into supporting a regime that is antithetical to democracy, that is antithetical to everything good that is with good about our political system, and that is antithetical to even basic honesty and integrity. A regime which sells teachers jobs uh, has to be not only morally corrupt, but it has to be rotten to the core. And with such a regime in place, it is really not surprising that mullahs and jihadis are being encouraged to run riot, to 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 do whatever they please, because that is the only way they can remain in power. That is the only way they can stick to power. That is the only way they can continue to reap the benefits of being in power, so to say, because out of power, Mamta Banerjee won't have any chance of selling a job or collecting tola or hafta or protection money, and nor will her henchmen have the privilege of raping women, grabbing property, and doing whatever they wish to do.
Fair enough, Dada. I appreciate that you never say no whenever I know आपकी limitations हैं. I understand that, and I still respect the fact that every time I reach out to you, you never say no to me, and you've always been kind with me as far as time is concerned. But once again, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Thanks a lot. Guys, we're going to continue the podcast as Kanchan Dada leaves us. But yeah, so I'm going to start taking your questions and comments from the start. Somebody has said, shame on the central government for not imposing presidential rule. Shame on BJP for not standing up for their cadre during post-poll violence in 2021. Let me just clarify these two things. You can criticize the BJP on many things, but Mr. Bhatt, you clearly don't understand that Article 366 just cannot be done. You guys have no idea of how constitutional law works or how anything works. And then जब वो होगा और वो निकल जाएगा, फिर बोलोगे बीजेपी क्यों नहीं कर पाती है. अरे भाई, ये 1970s की इंदिरा गांधी वाली इंडिया नहीं है. उसके बाद प्रीसीडिंग जजमेंट्स आई हैं. Go follow what lawyers are saying on social media. Don't listen to rabble rousing YouTubers. Go follow what lawyers are saying. And the only people fighting on the ground in Bengal right now are Hindu aligned outfits or the Hindu aligned political party of India, that is the BJP. This is the harsh reality of life. You may not like that, but that is the harsh reality of life, that no matter how imperfect they are, they are the only ones doing that. That is the real. आपको आइडिया नहीं है बंगाल में रहकर अगर आप बीजेपी कार्डर हो, आपको क्या पॉलिटिकल थ्रेट होती है. ओपन बीजेपी कार्डर को क्या थ्रेट होती है. You just have no idea about it. What steps are taken to curb online polarization? What steps can be taken to curb online polarization? I mean, if a handle is spewing violence and all sorts of things, those handles are shut down under the new broadcast bill, and those things are already done. Jo reporting hoti hai, those people are removed. Okay, the next is just too bigoted to comment. I can't take it. Why doesn't BJP do police reforms in states? That's a good question. Now, UP is one state that has actually increased its cop hiring. And you know the results are there. Look at the cop hiring processes under Yogi Adityanath. He's actually increased the numbers. And immediately the results came. Immediately. But yes, there is a lot more to be done. And I hear you. And that is a genuine criticism of all political parties in India, including the BJP, while the UP government is doing better right now. If demography is destiny, should we not split the state, or we waiting for this country to scale and wait for 1946 to repeat? Like, how do you bifurcate the state? You have to create a public approval for that. You have to create a mahal for that. It's not कि मैं सुबह उठा डिशके आऊं हो गया. ऐसे नहीं होता है भाई. ऐसे नहीं होता है. आप लोग कभी गवर्नेंस में बैठे हो क्या? मतलब यार, आप लोग, मतलब इंडिया डिक्टेटरशिप नहीं है भाई. नहीं है इंडिया डिक्टेटरशिप. आप लोगों को लगता है वो डिक्टेटरशिप है. वो नहीं है. There are systems in place. You have to work according to the system. सुबह आया, मजा आया, कर दिया. All the leftists first should live in majority Muslim population, then talk about secularism with Muslims. Yeah, no leftist is going to stay there. I can guarantee you that. They will not stay there. They will come in Hindu areas and preach all these things to Hindus. That's all they're good at. Where are the Ambedkarites, by the way? I don't know. I sent an article on principles and tribalism. Hope you had a chance to read it. I don't know. I may have or may not have. I don't know. That's such a vague answer. कि मैंने एक आर्टिकल भेजा है, अरे भाई मेरे को इतने ईमेल आते हैं और इतने आर्टिकल आते हैं, मैं कैसे याद रखूं और कैसे याद नहीं रखूं. But I will explain this to you. What I have realized in the discourse as far as Bengal is concerned, people make it sound as if चिल्लाने से पता चल जाता है कि अरे ये यूट्यूबर चिल्ला रहा है तो उसी को गुस्सा आता है. नहीं भाई, गुस्सा सबको आता है. पॉइंट ये है कि when you are a content creator and when you are here, sitting here, trying to give answers, you have to give honest answers and you have to give honest information to the people who listen to you. That's a moral responsibility that at least I believe I share as a person who generates content and creates content. People keep talking about, oh, the threat of Islamism. Believe me, as a disbeliever, nobody knows the threat of Islamism and feels it more than I do. You cannot feel it more than I do. So stop this nonsense of, just because somebody screams and shouts, they care more. They don't. They maybe are garnering clicks. They don't care more. If they care more, then tell them to demonetize all their videos about these kinds of subjects. Then they have my respect. Then the clicks argument does not work. So it's all bullshit, okay? You have to give balanced, honest perspective. Precedence rule, there cannot be imposed. It's just not there. Just not there. There is no precedent for that. You cannot impose it. On the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, I'm trying to understand that bit more. On the trifurcation of state, it doesn't happen overnight. What does happen is, the reality is, electorally, still a giant chunk of Hindus in Bengal vote for these parties. They do. Muslims and Hindus together vote for them. That's why they come in power. BJP has reached 38%. Once they reach the magical number, they will come in power. I can guarantee you, Waqf Act has been passed pan-India. Why does the violence occur in certain areas, not in other areas? Do you think this will happen in UP? They try it one day. They know what is going to happen the next day. Kambal kutai, pichwade mein danda, like it or not, that is going to happen. हिम्मत नहीं करेगा कोई. महाराष्ट्र में भी उनको मालूम है क्या होने वाला है. नागपुर में ट्राई किया, क्या हुआ बाद में? Message is clear. Political power does matter. When it comes to law and order, BJP is the only party that can maintain it. When will Muppets realize this in this country? How many times have I shown that image of communal riots related deaths in India? Wherever BJP is in power, it goes down. Wherever BJP is not in power, it keeps coming up. When will people realize this? Because BJP is very hawkish on law and order. This is actual data. This is not my data. I have not created this data. The road to peace and prosperity in that area has to be with the BJP taking care of that state. And yes, Bangladesh has to be dealt with. I know Kanchan Dada cannot talk about these things. He has compulsions. I respect that. Bangladesh is part of the problem. And I'm glad the government is slightly flexing its muscles now. Why did we let now here is a criticism of the government. Why was the garment industry allowed to prosper in Bangladesh? Why? क्या है, तुम साले खुद बहुत बड़े मल्टी मिलियनर देश हो गए जो तुम बांग्लादेश को संभाल रहे हो बैठ के? क्या उखाड़ा तुमने? वैसे भी इतना संभालने के बाद भी तुम्हारी लगी ही ना बंगाल में. क्या तुमने उखाड़ा? And why isn't anyone questioning the BJP about that? They should question the BJP about that ना. वहां पे तो कोई करता ही नहीं है. कोई नहीं करता उसके बारे में बात. बड़े महात्मा जी हम बने हुए हैं, हमने बांग्लादेश की गारमेंट इंडस्ट्री को पूरा संवारना और सफेरना है. क्या जरूरत है भाई? खत्म करो उनकी इंडस्ट्री, लाओ वापिस इधर. अभी ट्रांसशिपमेंट्स बंद किया ना, पता चला ना उनको स्वाद. बिजली बंद कर दो अडानी की, करे, ये ही करना पड़ेगा. पावर इज पावर. और ये बकवास है कि इतने परसेंटेज हो गए तो पुलिस नहीं कंट्रोल कर पाएगी, ऐसे नहीं हो पाएगा. बकवास है ये. पुलिस जब डंडा लेके उतरती है ना, अच्छों को नानी दाद आ जाती है. 2 दिन में mark my words, this violence was allowed to happen because the state government did not care. If the state decides it wants to control things in India, 24 hours everything gets normal. Always remember this. In the current state capacity of India too, violence is allowed to happen in this country. The state government of West Bengal is the one that is guilty. Do not fall for these false arguments that the BJP is as guilty as the TMC, because BJP is governing all other states in India where giant numbers of Muslims also live, and other states in India. But it doesn't happen there. This has happened because it is a political thing. वक्फ एक्ट सिर्फ बंगाल में नहीं लगी है, पूरे देश में लगी है. सो ये बकवास कृपया करके बंद करिए और रियलिटी चेक लीजिए. There are genuine things to criticize the BJP about. But to criticize them for something in a state where they are not even in power, what nonsense. बीजेपी अपने कार्यकर्ता के लिए नहीं करती है. भाई तुमको मालूम है क्या बीजेपी के कार्यकर्ता क्या कर रहे हैं और क्या नहीं कर रहे हैं? और जैसे मैं तो कभी मिला ही नहीं हूं बीजेपी वालों को. There are mistakes in every system. ऑप्शन क्या है तुम्हारे पास? क्या करोगे? What is the point of CAA if it is happening inside India, out of the frying pan into the fire? Listen, CAA is a moral responsibility. All hell has not broken loose. I can guarantee you, even if an area has an 80%, 90% Muslim population, if the law and order machinery is controlled properly and functioning properly, घंटा कुछ नहीं होने वाला उधर. You fix the law and order, the state has to show will. Every single state in India, if they send the message, things happen. Do not fall for this false argument of anything. Yes, demography is destiny is something I agree. So never forget this figure. Demography is destiny. And all ideas are not equal. Never buy this bullshit that all cultural ideas are equal. They are not. All cultural ideas are not equal. Some ideas in some cultures are inferior. These are inferior idea carrying people in some ways. Hindus carry some inferior ideas than Muslims in some ways. But the fact is that if you believe in democratic setups and liberalism and actual human rights and many other things, there are many areas in this country where just cannot live. You cannot live. And you have to make sure that you send a message to many of those people who live in these areas that enough is enough. And for that, you need parties who believe in law and order to come in power. You have to do that. There is no shortcut to that. You have to make sure those parties come in power. No matter how much these rabble-rousers on social media tell you it is not the case. There is only one reality. The solution to this is political. There is no other solution. The solution to every single problem that we have as far as demographics are concerned, law and order concerned, these are political problems. They have political answers. Even your civilizational problems will get solved through politics, not through anything else. Yes, we need to be socially aware. We need to do our bit. Everybody does. I do it. I'm sure all of you do it too. But it does not mean that politics is not the route to solve that. And like it or not, BJP is your only option. No matter how desperate you are and how irritated you are with them. That's your only option. You have to keep pushing them to do the right thing. That's the only solution. I'm going to end it over here. I am very irritated with what has happened in Bengal today. And the fact of the matter is that मुझे नहीं मालूम क्या कर सकते हैं क्या नहीं कर सकते. मुझे इतना मालूम है मैं जो कर सकता हूं मैं करूंगा, आपको जो करना है आप लोग करो. My job on this podcast is to do honest, balanced discussions. I am not going to do rabble rousing and देश को आग लगाने वाली commentary. I can't do that. That's not me. I'm not going to do that. This podcast will remain balanced, and that's my thing. The members of this podcast expect me to be like that. So I will stick to that. And I will always remain like that. The members of this podcast expect me to do that. And I am honestly trying to do that. बाकी आप लोगों की इच्छा है, जो करना है करो. And to the people in Bengal, stay strong, stay safe, and honestly vote this damn political outfit out for once. Just vote them out. बस करो. एक बार बीजेपी को 10-15 साल का पीरियड दो उस स्टेट को कुछ बनाने के लिए. All hell has not been broken loose. Everything is not lost. वो करो. बीजेपी को रेक्रिएशनल गालियां देने के बियॉन्ड भी कुछ काम करो. यही मेरी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट है. And if you can support this podcast, do consider of becoming members. You can buy the podcast merch. You can buy my book. You can send one-time donations. Every single link is there in the description of the podcast. अगर कुछ नहीं कर सकते हो तो like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're an audio listener, leave a rating in the audio platform. I'll leave you guys at that. Take care. Namaste. Bye-bye.